Hey, Liquid Trucking, it's Marcus here. Thanks for joining us for this Best of the Liquid Trucking podcast episode. You know, with so many episodes under our belt, we've got so many great things to revisit that I'm not going to sit here and pontificate about it. This is a collection of some of our favorite moments that have happened in the past right here on the Liquid Trucking podcast. Okay, Liquid Trucking, when we were deciding what we were going to run here in our Best of episode, we wanted to put some thought into it. We wanted to really think about not only the episodes that were the most clicked, but the most impactful episodes. And we have kind of a nice mix of the two here. We will be playing some of the clips from our most popular episodes, which I still can't really wrap my head around. Some of the download numbers, when you look at the size of the company that Liquid Trucking is and how many people have downloaded some of these episodes. For instance, this first one is a combination of one of our most clicked on episodes and one of our most impactful episodes. Right here, I've actually got a bunch of content from our episode covering the 500-year flood. That was episode number 23 of the Liquid Trucking podcast, and we had a bunch of Liquid employees come on the show with us and talk about that experience. A horrible flood that literally caused Liquid Trucking to have to relocate for a little while. Of course, this took place back in March of 2019. A lot of you will remember it, but we've got great content. If you want to go back and listen to the whole episode, again, it's episode 23. It features Roger Schmidt, Josh Schmidt, Gabe Schmidt, Evan Schmidt, Jason Eisenman, Tanner Bowman, and Bo Whipple. And it is a very, very heavy episode, but also very informative and just a real cool peek behind the curtain on what kind of company Liquid really is. So please enjoy some clips from our episode 23 of the Liquid Trucking podcast, The 500-Year Flood. I have dispatch and account manager Tanner Bowman from Liquid Trucking. Tanner, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And, of course, we've got General Manager Josh Schmidt on the line as well. Josh, we appreciate the time.
Appreciate it, Marcus.
So this 500-year flood, pretty nuts. You wake up, it's 2019, you hear about 100-mile-an-hour winds, 1 to 3 feet of snow, a bomb cyclone. What's going through your mind, Tanner? Talk to me about the first couple of hours of this flood and how you were feeling and what was going through your head.
Well, you know, we had all the information, kind of like you said there. You know, sometimes the weathermen don't get it right, so you're kind of going, yeah, sure. You know, probably not going to be as bad as you think. And living in Plattsmouth my whole life, been through quite a few floods, so you kind of have an idea what you think you're getting into, and then you don't really consider all the extra factors of the frozen ground and hot weather and the melting snow and all that. So Thursday we come into work and the water's a little high. Well, then it starts coming over the railroad tracks right next to the shop there and kind of trickling around the road. And everybody's watching it, kind of looking at it. And as day goes on, the stream next to the road gets a little bit bigger and you don't really realize exactly what's going on. But then people start leaving the office and little, you know, unbeknownst to us in dispatch, we couldn't quite see what was going on. But the road behind the truck shop from where we were sitting had been flooded over, and it was getting bigger and deeper. And finally, when it was time to go home about 5:30 or so, we come all pulling out of the parking lot. There's, 100-yard stretch of road was covered, and there's, maybe 2 feet deep at that point.
Wow.
And maybe not that deep, but it was pretty deep. And so we get out of there, and we're thinking, man, you know, this is pretty nuts. You know, it's never been this bad before. And we had an idea of maybe it was going to get a little bit higher, but didn't really think too much worse. Well, then Friday we come into work. We get phone calls really late at night, early in the morning, and, you know, hey guys, get to work as soon as you can. We got to see what's going on here. We'll show up to work, and everything's covered in water. You know, it's up to the curb of the shops. But luckily the night before we had the good idea to move equipment kind of out of the yard to various places around town, up on the hills, up on the roads, get them out of the lot so they wouldn't get blocked in. So we got a lot of our equipment out of there. But then Friday comes rolling around and whatever was left is stuck. You know, it's it's pretty deep. We had to airboat in, couldn't drive cars in. Luckily, the owners and a few people in the community had airboats, so that was my first ride on an airboat. And not the ideal way to have your first ride, but they airboat us in. We work Friday. We're working on keeping the fleet moving. We ended up having to cut holes into the floors and into some walls because we had to move the servers up from the basement because we thought, well, geez, if it's this high, what if it gets higher? Who knows what's going to happen at this point? And so we're running around. A lot of the office staff came in. Some of them stayed at home and worked from home. But a lot of people came in, and we were cutting the building up, running wires places they shouldn't be, and moving everything up off the floors, getting files out of filing cabinets, just getting us up as high as we could. That was Friday. So then Saturday, we have a game plan usually on Saturdays, we dispatch for Sunday and Monday. So we're like, okay, everything's good. We'll come in Saturday at the crack of dawn. We'll get in here and we'll dispatch out, and we'll see kind of what's going on then. Well, we come in Saturday, and now there's, I don't know, 2-3 feet of water in our administrative wash bay building, and there's probably 4 feet of water in the truck shop.
Wow.
And things are floating, filing cabinets are knocked over, chairs are everywhere. It was just a disaster. And so we airboat in again. We have hip waders on, chest waders on, get in here. We dispatch out Saturday. Luckily, Josh had gotten word we could use an office building up in town. So we decided we were going to pull the servers out on Saturday, which is kind of one of those deals where if the servers go in the flood, we're SOL. That's all of our business, all of our hardware, compute, programs, all that stuff. All of our information's on those servers. So
you'd be quite literally dead in the water at that point.
Exactly. Okay. Exactly. So we double wrap them in trash bags, throw them on the airboat, airboat them out. It was almost like the fall of Saigon, but it was the fall of Boreapolis, the last boat out. And so we get out, and it was crazy, man. I'd never seen anything like it. I hope to never see anything like it again. But we got all the stuff out. We moved to a new office up in town, up on Highway 75 at the car dealership, and we sat up there for 6 months and dispatched out of a little, it seemed like a locker room size. There's, I don't know, 6 or 7 of us in there, just a small little room, dispatching for a couple months. And then, the waters are seeded, and everybody just came back together again and cleaned everything up and got as much stuff back as operating as quickly as possible. And the trailer shop got the trailers in, and I think it took them just a couple days to get all the wheel bearings replaced and all that stuff checked out because they had sand in them, everything from being in the water. And, the truck shop got all the trucks, drained all the oil out of them to make sure there's no water in the engines, and got those fixed up and got everybody back on the road as quick as possible. So it was really an amazing come together moment for the company. You always try to preach, the company's kind of like family, and it really did feel like everybody was just, helping each other out, coming together like family on that instance. I mean, just really a cool, inspirational thing to see and be a part of, and even though it was a terrible thing, it was very, very interesting time in the company's history, to say the least.
Boy, I guess so. And people always come together the best in times of tragedy. And it sounds like it was true, hands down, for Liquid during this flood. Now, Josh, as the general manager, Tanner just gave us a great walkthrough of all of the difficulties you were facing just trying to keep the business up and running. You've got trucks out on the road. You've got drivers to worry about. And now you've also got not only your business, but your community to worry about. How did you balance all those thoughts and feelings going through your head and keep a level enough head to push this thing forward to where you guys could actually keep Liquid not only up and running, but thriving during this flood?
That's a great question. It seems like almost like a nightmare to me now, and I can't really remember exactly what I was thinking. I think that the owners here, myself, my brother, my dad, our houses were also flooded, so we didn't have a place to go. our families, we just didn't have a place to live, or we were just wondering, is this it? Is it over with? But at the time, I think when something terrible happens, I think your adrenaline kicks in, and your body has a way of allowing you to think clear-headedly and move forward. I think I give most credit to our staff here and our family and our friends for picking us up in our time of need. And that's basically what happened there. We were trying to lead the ship, but we didn't have any answers. What are you supposed to do when everything you own, including your houses, your businesses, we even had a campground business that was underwater. Everything's underwater, so it was tough. But the really cool thing, as Tanner touched on, was everybody stepped up. It would have been really easy for everybody to say, well, this place is screwed. I'm going to start looking for a job, or I'm out of here. This is dangerous. I'm not going to, risk my life to go get these servers out of here, or, that kind of thing. So it was really interesting how it all broke down there.
And how did the community come together here? Because it sounds like you were supported, and at least you were able to move into an old car dealership up on the hill and get away from the flooding at the terminal so that you guys could keep dispatching. And Tanner said you guys were there for a period of time. Was that something that somebody did for the company just out of the kindness of their heart? Was there a connection there? How did you guys end up at the old car dealership?
It's Plattsmouth is a town that's, at the mouth of the Missouri River. So the Platte River and Missouri River intersect here. As Tanner mentioned, no one in Plattsmouth floods aren't a strange thing here, but they're never like that. Mm-hmm. So the community really did come together. It wasn't just our company. It was the whole community that came together, and people were offering us, olive branches help. The car dealership, Greg Young, actually reached out to us and said, hey, do you need a place to go? And we didn't have any better options, so we did. Like Tanner mentioned, also the airboats, people that owned airboats were in here helping us. They were taking our families and our employees' families that live around here to their houses so you could get what's left or what you needed out of there to, your clothes and your stuff. Yeah, and I guess I want to say that the real heroes here were really our mechanics and our drivers and those kinds of people. I remember back, and I think Tanner would back this up, not one person complained over that 6 weeks time when this company was a mess. I think dispatch was just they had no access to a lot of our programs, and they were just telling drivers, hey, just head this way, I guess. I don't know what to do next. And they were bridges out, so drivers were having to figure it out, driving way out of route just to get to where they needed to go. And, we had new drivers. We had drivers that have been here a while. Not one of those guys complained. And, that to me was really special. Looking back at the time, yes, it was a nightmare, but looking back, it was really cool how everybody came together. Mechanics, drivers, dispatchers, office staff, mm-hmm. The community.
Yeah, it's such a cool story to hear about everybody, pulling up their bootstraps and heading into battle almost here, and to know that nobody was complaining in the light of all this adversity. It can't be easy when your job runs on such a strict schedule and you're trying to get things to people that need them so that they can do their job. I imagine there was a lot of frustration outside the area from your customers and things like that. Did you find that customers were also sympathetic to what you were going through once they actually got the news of, hey, the entire terminal's under the water? Tanner, you might talk to some more customers and maybe you can speak to this, but how did they react when something like this is happening? Because when I look at it kind of big picture, I see the customers as obviously part of the Liquid community. You guys need them to keep doing your jobs as well. What was the response, and how did they aid in your guys' recovery?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. The customers, and I mentioned we tried to get as much of our equipment out of the yard as we could, and we did. We still, I think, had maybe 15 or 16 trailers that ended up staying behind, but we kind of put them up as high as we could so they weren't as deep in the water as what they would have been. So, we reached out to the customers. We told them what loads were, kind of marooned in the middle of the flood. And we said, hey, if you don't believe us, I know this sounds like a pretty tall tale, but just turn on the news. And they all already knew about it, and they offered any kind of support they could. And not a lot of our customers are local here, so they can only offer so much help. But they were incredibly kind and open to any options we gave them. We did prioritize what we could as far as the loads that were stuck here in the yard. Those need to be the first ones into the shop to get them out as soon as possible. They're a week behind already or something like that. So they were all incredibly understanding. We obviously, hey, here's a picture to back up our stance here. Here's a picture of your trailer, and it's in 3-4 feet of water. So it's staying right where it's at for a little bit. And they couldn't have been more understanding. I mean, what are you going to do at that point?
Right.
You're not going to change the facts at that point. So it was really cool to see even some of the tougher customers kind of relax a little bit and say, hey, we got it. Let us know if there's anything we can do to help, even though we're 500 miles away. We'll do anything we can. So it was really nice and refreshing. So
it sounds like it. I mean, I guess a picture of you at work in chest waders probably tells all the story that the customers need to see. It's like, that's not a typical work outfit for you, at least when I've been at the terminal.
Yeah, no, we got a lot of pictures for sure.
Jason, I'm going to start with you. You've been giving me a lot of good kind of behind the scenes info on this. Can you just walk me through day one of the flood from your perspective? You wake up on the 19th of March the 15th of March in 2019. What's going on? Is there water already at your feet at your place when you woke up? What are you seeing, and how does everything kind of start to come together as that day rolls on?
Yeah, my day is a lot different that day, and I think it was that day. As I get older and this gets farther away, it's hard to remember, but on that Friday, we were part of the World of Wheels in Omaha at the CHI Center. We had a truck and a car show. So my whole day was focused on a big marketing event, and coming back from that marketing event with our equipment, the waters were over the river and they were kind of coming across roads, and so it was. And I don't know if that was the Thursday or the Friday, but Evan might be able to weigh in more, because at the time I didn't live in Plattsmouth, but I worked here, and so Evan's probably going to have a lot more details living here and working here of that day. I'd be curious, was that the Friday, Evan?
So yeah, I think that your memory is pretty good there, Jason. I think the Thursday was the day that when we woke up, we knew there could be some flooding, but we didn't know how bad it could be. But by the end of the day, it was clear that it was going to be really bad. And then Friday, we already knew it was going to be bad, but then, we didn't realize that it was going to be 500 years bad.
Yeah, that's exactly what Roger said. He said that you guys had actually suffered a flood back in, I think it was 2011, maybe. And he said, well, we were prepared for another 2011 flood, but within a few hours, we could tell that the 2019 flood was going to be far worse. Would you agree with that, Evan?
Yeah, unfortunately, that was the case.
So I heard, Evan, that you had a pretty big hand in all the IT that was moved. Now, you had a big task in front of you, because anytime that there is a uncontrollably rushing water coming into things, technology tends to be the first thing that goes, because it can't get wet at all. How were you able to secure the computer system and get all of that data and information to where Liquid Trucking was going to be operating for the interim while you guys cleaned up all the damage?
Well, I'd love to say that I had a great plan and we just executed the plan as it was written, but I didn't have a plan for this at all. And so, yeah, you're right. Like, the technology was the first thing that people started to go, okay, what are we going to do here? And thankfully, Marcus, we had just a lot of people who rallied around me and around the technology that needed to get moved that everybody understood the importance of. So I remember really vividly, on Friday, like dispatch and guys from the truck shop were in the server room with me, and we took everything out of the rack. We powered everything down after we were done dispatching for the day. We took everything out of the rack. We cut a hole in the ceiling, and we recabled and reconnected everything upstairs in Mike Bynes's office at the time. And so, really not so much a plan as just people rallying and coming up with the best thing that we could do at the time.
Sure. Well, and it might be good that you didn't have a plan. I'm taken back to my favorite Mike Tyson quote, which, man, I'm surprised I have one of those. But my favorite Mike Tyson quote is, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And
right.
This kind of seems like you guys got punched in the face here a little bit. And even if you had a plan with the scale of this flood, it might not have worked, Evan. You guys might have had to punt just because of how bad things were. Now, I understand that you were actually utilizing airboats to wrap technology in plastic, various technology, computers, servers, and the like, and airboat them off the property. Is that correct?
Yeah, it wasn't the kind of airboat ride that you'd want, but it was the one we did that day. I remember that was Peyton Rockwell. That was his first airboat ride. Was, I can't remember if it was into the office or it must have been both ways. We all got airboated in on Saturday, and then we had to be airboated out. So Friday, obviously the flood was really bad, and to my knowledge, we still were able to drive in that Friday and then left on airboats that Friday or maybe we're able to drive out that Friday, but Saturday, everybody had to be airboated in and airboated out. The office was still operational, but there was water, inside the building. So that day was where we kind of reached out, made a cry for help. And yeah, you're right. Like, we probably, even if we would have had a plan, we would have had to deviate from it, because we found out that we would be moving into the Greg Young Chrysler dealership up on the hill in Plattsmouth that morning. So, yeah, we had, it was a very much a, whole community effort, and a lot of people coming together to really help out in our time of need.
Yeah, it sounds like it. What a great community that you guys have made your home in there, not only for Liquid Trucking, but your personal homes as well. And I know that when this was happening, a lot of people were worried not only about the company, but they were worried about their own homes. A lot of people in your family, Evan, and Bo Whipple as well, have weighed in on the fact that they were coming to work knowing that their house was inundated with water. Was that similar to you? Were you living in a house that was flooding at the time as well?
No, I personally was not, but yeah, there were a number of people who were not just affected at their workspace there at Liquid Trucking, but their personal homes were affected. Thankfully I was not affected by that, but that was a huge aspect of this particular flood.
Yeah. And Gabe told me about a Mennonite group that came in, a Christian ministry that came in shortly after water receded and started helping everybody there from Liquid, get the demolition that needed to be done at the houses done and working for free. That just, again, is a testament to the great community that you all live in and have had a hand in building. Jason, I do want to go to you here for a little bit of a retrospective, if you will. In 2019, you're living in the moment. Obviously, you're watching all of this stuff happen. When you look back on it now, from 2024's perspective, can you believe that everything worked out the way that it did? I mean, I have to imagine, with devastation like you guys were looking at out the front door of the terminal, there had to be some trepidation. There had to be some thoughts that creeped in every now and then of, man, I don't know if we're going to be able to recover from this. I don't know if we're going to be able to keep this up and running. Now that you look back on it, how everything is planned out, Jason, do you feel, or I guess I shouldn't even ask if you feel a certain way. What are your thoughts on how the company and the community was able to deal with this, patch it up, and get back to life as normal?
Well, I just remember, and I'm going to back up a little bit and give some credit to, just Roger Schmidt, the Schmidt family, and the Plattsmouth community. I didn't have a doubt for a second. One of the things you learn when you kind of start working here, it doesn't take long to figure out how much they give to the area. When Josh and others started reaching out on Facebook, I knew that it wouldn't take much for other people to jump in. In fact, I'll tell a quick little story. I came to work, I don't even know what day it was, when the water had receded and we're starting to clean up the office. And I looked at this fella and I was like, he's just tearing out walls. And I'm like, I asked him, like, who are you? I've never met you before. Like, he's like, well, I'm Brian. And ended up being Brian Leakus. First time I met him, and he's a family friend, local community. I'd never met the guy, but here he was tearing out the walls after they were flooded. And I'm just like, I'm like, did we hire you, or how did you get here? And he goes, no, I know Roger. I'm here to help. And he had his kids with him, or some workers. And I turned to Roger later, and he goes, he's just helping. Don't worry. Do whatever he says. And I just started taking direction, whatever this guy needed, haul this, tear this, whatever, But to get back to the fact that, when I first started working here in 2013, you hear all these different stories and you see it. And so I knew that people were going to chip in. It just didn't really resonate until it started all happening from so many angles, as Evan would testify to, that no matter where you turn, there was somebody like kind of willing to help or do something, from, his IT partners or just people with space or this or that. And then, there was a phone call that Josh made really early on a Saturday morning. I was still laying in bed, and I'm like, what can I do? I'm not living there. I'm in Papillion at the time. And he just has this like rallying phone call of, well, here's what, and I think he used the word dad as in Roger, and this is what we're going to do, and this, and you can come do this. And, it was just like, boom, it was time to go. And everybody did what they could in their own way. Like Evan said, from the truck shop to the trailer shop to tank wash, whether it's IT or, everybody brings a different aspect to what they do and how they pitched in.
For sure. I'm also reminded of the adage that it takes a village to raise a child. Take the child part out of it and say it takes a village to come together and help a company like this. Obviously the Schmidts give a lot back to their community, and the community wanted to, say thank you for that in spades by coming through and helping Liquid Trucking. And then you got the Schmidts that turn around and say, well, that was real nice of you guys to help us. We're just going to fill the community pool for a summer and send 77 or 78 trucks up there, one a day, to keep that pool full. It's just that back and forth is something that you don't find in a lot of overly metropolitan areas. You guys aren't very far from Omaha there, but when you're out in Plattsmouth, you don't get the feeling that you're that close to a major metropolitan area. It is a small community. It's a close-knit community. And having grown up in a community like that, you can see that, you can feel it. It's a different vibe out there, and it's a really good one. And I think everybody in the community there in Plattsmouth is lucky, including everybody at Liquid and also outside the company. They're lucky that that's the way that the community operates, because, we could still be dealing with this devastation if it weren't for all the help that people were willing to chip in. And, if they live on high ground, come on down and get your feet wet. We got work to do.
Yeah, I would agree. And I got to give Evan a little more credit, because he's probably not going to give it to himself. But we had, at the time, one person in our IT department, which is Evan, and many other things. At a small company, we all wear a lot of hats, and Evan wears many. Well, we have two now, plus our vendor partners that help us manage things. But I remember being at the car lot the next week on a plastic table. I think we went somewhere and bought plastic chairs and tables, and we pretty much occupied a car lot, and everybody was sitting down working, whether it's on a laptop or a full computer, a desk space. Like, it was almost a seamless move to put all these office folks to work. And granted, they help move things and stuff, but what an accomplishment to keep everybody working, having access to all that stuff, billing loads, dispatching loads. I mean, there is a lot behind the scenes that has to happen to keep an organization this big supported and all the people paid. Payroll was a big one. Like, I was sitting there thinking, like, man, how are we going to get everybody paid on Friday the next week, as this is happening? And within, by Wednesday of the next week, I didn't have a shred of a doubt it was all going to be able to happen. It was pretty miraculous.
It sounds like it. And Evan, I'll tell you right now, if there's ever been a time where you could throw your shoulder out, patting yourself on the back, it sounds like now might be the time, my friend, because the more I hear about it, the technological mountain that you had to climb to keep everything moving forward with the way that everything that we do is on a computer anymore. You were in the face of some pretty outstanding odds and were able to keep everything up and running. Do you ever look back on that and feel a bit of a sense of accomplishment for that, Evan?
I do think that was just a beautiful thing that happened. There was a lot of little miracles that led up to that big miracle of, like Jason's saying, whether it was payroll being ran next week or the phones being lit up and our dispatchers sending loads. It was a miracle. And it just came down to everybody saying, let's just take one step, and then after we take that step, we'll take the next step. And a lot of people came alongside for that. Jason's right. Like, the way that this community works is a beautiful thing to watch in action.
Roger, I want to start with you here because I know that when you woke up that morning and saw the water on the ground, things must have been going through your head at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Can you take me through the first day or two of this thing and what you were thinking, what was going on in your head, and how you were dealing with this giant flood that was all over your property, including your home, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, it was pretty intimidating. We basically, that there was water coming. We thought we were prepared for it because in 2011 we were through a flood also, and so we knew where all the high ground was, and we thought it wouldn't get any higher than it did in 2011, and we were wrong about that. And so couple days before, we made preparations for a 2011 flood. And then when we woke up that morning, we could see that it had already exceeded that. And then it was just a matter of panicking to the point of you just went to your most highly valued assets and got all your help together to try to save whatever you could save. And we really had a hell of a team here. We knew our houses were pretty much gone. So that was a matter of just saving the women and children and dogs and cats and getting them out of there, because there was really nothing else we could do.
Sure.
And take your clothes that you had on your back and leave. And then we came over to the truck shop because it was still not completely underwater. And then just started taking every truck and trailer and tools and everything. So it was all hands on deck, and I'm really proud of all of our help that we all joined together and got things moved and out to higher ground, all the stuff that we could. Of course, we still lost a portion of everything, but we did a pretty fair job of getting 80% of our trucks and trailers and tools to higher ground. And yeah, that was quite a 24-hour period. Nobody got much sleep, I can tell you that.
That does not surprise me. How do you balance, Roger, the home life that you're dealing with this flood, and then also the work life when you're dealing with this flood? You said we knew the houses were goners, so get everything out. Were you able to put the personal part on the back burner while you tackled the bigger fight that was the liquid trucking compound?
Yeah, we did, because there really wasn't any other choice. It was, okay, how can we, both house was flooded, so he had to get his wife and children and out of there and accommodate them. And we had some really good neighbors and friends that took everybody in and made a place for us to at least stay temporarily.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just started, my wife and Bo's wife and Gabe's wife and kids all went to those places and stayed behind. And then we came back to the shops and just started moving whatever we could and getting our assets out. And so, everybody had to work together and prioritize everything. And the girls, our wives, all knew what we had to do, and that's what we did.
Sure. And it sounds like, just already based on the people I've already talked to about this, that the community really came together, everybody helping everybody in a way. And we'll get to that more here as we continue to tell the story. Gabe, talk to me about your day that day. Obviously, wife and kids, the house is underwater, or at least is becoming underwater very quickly. What was going through your mind, and how did you deal with the stresses of the 500-year flood?
Yeah, like Roger said, we kind of knew it was coming, and we were prepared somewhat for a 2011 flood. And in 2011, the water crept into our parking lot in the business, flooded our houses, but didn't get near the buildings or anything like that. We were prepared for our houses maybe to be flooded, but not the business. So I got up about 4 o'clock in the morning and walked across the road from my house, and I saw the water coming up on the crown of the road, just getting ready to cross. So I quietly went back in the house. Wife and kids were asleep, and packed up all the keepsakes, photo albums, all that stuff out of the basement, moved it upstairs to higher ground. And then about by 7 a.m., went and woke up the wife and kids. Water was about a foot deep in the garage by then.
Wow.
Packed up the wife and kids, got them ready for school, shipped them out to school. And that was the last time we stayed in that house. So after that, just water kept coming. The business was still in good shape. It was on a little bit higher ground. So I stayed home and kept moving things higher and higher as the water kept coming. And then eventually I had to get out about 10 o'clock in the morning before I wasn't going to be able to get out. So
Wow.
got out of there, went out to our lake, and the fire department was calling me to grab my airboat to get my neighbors out. So went out there, got the airboat. My father-in-law, I've got an airboat as well. And we launched those and went and got all the neighbors out of their houses in the neighborhood. After all that, water kept coming, and then it was got the kids, wife and kids settled into a temporary place, and just started working on all night long, working on getting all the equipment out and things up in the air in the shops. And yeah, it was a pretty wild time.
Yeah, I think that's putting it lightly. How much water, Gabe, was in your house? Like you said, you had to get out around 10 a.m. Are you up to your waist? Are you up to your shoulders? How deep was the water on the ground floor there at your place?
In the basement, by 11 o'clock in the morning, it was probably, waist deep in the basement.
Wow.
And by the next day, about 24 hours later, it was probably, I think it ended up cresting in the house 1.5 feet in the main level. So the basement was full, and about 1.5 feet in the main level is where it crested at.
Wow. And so I'm not familiar with how things happen after a flood. Obviously, that water damage to your basement is probably on the border of unrepairable. Did you guys have to build a new house, or were you able to get back into that one? You said it was the last night you stayed there, so I'm assuming a new house was in order.
Like Raj said, we've been through a flood before, and actually twice before in that house. This was the first time my wife and I have been through one with kids, and I'm out. So we did build a new house, but we also did get that one fixed back up.
So it's the house was actually salvaged. I'm glad to hear that. I was really worried that there was going to be a whole second part of this interview where we talked about the devastation where you guys all had to get new houses because of this flood. But it sounds, while it was terrible, and obviously you probably lost a lot of prized possessions of yours, sounds like you were able to get out in front of it a little bit and still salvage some things. So we're glad to hear that for sure.
Yeah, the best thing that could have happened with salvaging those houses, a group called Christian Aid Ministries showed up 2 days later, a Mennonite colony, and they brought trailers full of tools, people, and they basically came and gutted all those houses for free. And they worked tirelessly, and they just work off donations. So I can't say enough good things about that group.
That's amazing. And another piece to that story that we're talking about where the community really came together there. And again, I'm going to get to that, but I want to talk to Bo here real quick first. Bo, as the trailer shop manager, man, I've seen some pictures. You guys did a really good job getting a lot of the assets out there like Roger was talking about, but there were some trailers that were still up above the wheels in water. I'm wondering if those things weren't loaded, would they have floated away?
We actually had an unsheeted, uninsulated trailer that acted like a bobber and floated about 30 feet. But yeah, so all of our stuff was scattered and they were being stored at different places. And I think we had probably around 50 to 70 trailers that we had to get in and pull all the wheel bearings, do new wheel bearings, wheel seals. And it was just as fast as you could do it to get our stuff running again so they could turn around and start making money again.
Sure. And I talked to Josh Schmidt and Tanner Bowman just before I got on here with you guys, and that was one thing that they actually called out as being a real saving grace in this whole situation is how fast you guys were able to get the wheel bearings swapped out on those trailers once you had the use of your shop back. So hats off to you. It sounds like you guys pulled some real miracles to get some of these trailers back on the road in the aftermath here.
Yes, it was pretty nonstop.
Would you say that's the busiest you've ever been at the shop, is trying to get that done in a timely manner?
Yeah, I would say so. We had everybody from the truck shop and the trailer shop come down to our facility, and we gutted the whole place as far as everything that was in there, pressure washed, cleaned, and we were running the next day.
That's amazing.
So it was kind of a company-wide group effort to get that place up and going as fast as we could and get our trailers back on the road.
That's amazing. Great work there. And you touched on it there, Bo, and it's a perfect segue. You talk about a group effort. The whole company came together and worked as hard as they could to make sure that the company stayed afloat. And it sounds like the community really came together here and helped you guys out too. When Gabe mentioned the Mennonite colony that came and worked for free, there was something else here that was done for free out of the kindness of someone's heart that I got to bring up. Roger, if you could, can you talk to me a little bit about the community pool and what you guys did for the local community pool there in the aftermath of this flood?
Yeah, what happened was Platte, Nebraska, that's right where the Missouri River and Platte River come together. Actually, the Platte runs into the Missouri at Plattsmouth, and that's where the flood really had the biggest impact. So all of Plattsmouth's wells were inundated, so they didn't have any water, and they were running on the rural water from the county out here, which was limited. And so they weren't going to fill the pool up for summer for the kids. And so a friend of mine, his name's Rob Meisaner, and they are with W&M Farms and Fast Grass. They raise sod down on one of the fields next to us, a couple miles from us. and he had a big irrigation well down there. And so I went to the city and I said, hey, I can supply the water and trucks to fill the pool. And so they agreed that would be fine. So we took over and filled the pool up at, I think it was like, I don't know, 100 and
It was a lot.
yeah, 180,000 gallons.
Whoa.
And then we had to keep filling it up because it would evaporate. And so we took care of that most of the summer and put one driver on it and just kept it full. And the kids got to enjoy the summer and everything went as usual.
I think from what I remember, I'm wanting to think it was 67 or 77 loads.
Yeah, I
of
think
water.
so.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
And we really appreciated everything that everybody did for us. And so it was a way to give back.
Oh yeah, and such a great way to give back. When Jason told me about this, I immediately had flashbacks to growing up as a kid in a little tiny mountain town of only 2,000 people, and I know that Plattsmouth is similar to that. It's a very tight knit, small community, and there's not a lot for the kids to do there. I'll tell you right now, my parents would have been bald by the time I was 12 years old if there hadn't have been a community pool where I grew up, because I loved the water, and that was a place where they could go and just drop me off, and my sister and I could spend all day there. My sister was a lifeguard at the pool for years when she was in high school. She had her first job there. That community pool was so important to me as a kid, and I imagine that the amount of lives that you guys touched just by making sure that pool was full for that one summer, you'll never truly understand the impact that liquid trucking had on that community. And I got to say, huge pat on the back to all of you guys for that, because that's not something that you had to do, something that you wanted to do for the kind or out of the kindness of your heart to thank the community for how much they supported you in your time of need.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Go ahead, please.
Both Gabe and Josh, and I imagine Bo, all hung out at the swimming pool back when they were younger, and learning how to swim as a life lesson is so important.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Especially when you're talking about a flood of this magnitude every 500 years or whenever it decides to show up, right?
Yeah.
Gabe, do you have any memories of the pool as a kid? Did you get into any mischief out there, or are you just out there working on your backstroke the whole time? Did we lose Gabe?
Oh, what was that?
Sorry. I
was busy laughing about the backstroke.
Well, that's what I was wondering. Did you get into any mischief at the pool, or were you just working on your backstroke out there? Sounds like you spent some time out there as a kid.
Oh yeah, same as you. We spent about every day, every summer at the pool. Yeah, I'm sure I got into plenty of mischief, but I don't think I ever got kicked out.
Oh, that's good. I can't say the same. But it's that moment of realization you have when you're standing there in your wet swimming trunks and you've got no place to go and no towel and no shoes. And it's a realization that maybe it's time to start acting like an adult. So it was good for me, but that's awesome. So Gabe, how did you feel when you knew that liquid trucking was going to be helping the pool out? Is that a feeling unlike any other to be able to do that for a community and have it make such a big impact?
I don't know what I felt. We just wanted to give back to the community. It's not, I can't say that I guess it makes you feel good to be able to do something and give back to the community. But at the same time, we were so busy rebuilding our lives and our business and helping out with the communities. Like, we didn't really have time to have too many feelings about anything, really.
Sure. It makes total
sense. For the first year. So.
Yeah, no, and that was going to be another question I was going to ask. Bo, I was going to turn to you for this one. How long would you say it was after this flood until the shop was back to normal and working at 100% efficiency with all the tools and everything that you need to do the job? How long did that take?
So if I can back up a little bit, we didn't really talk about my house at all. I live on the same lake as those guys did. And so when this flood came in, keep in mind, we have no place to live. Now we have no offices in my trailer shop. Everything was working off of cell phones. Yeah, it was pretty hard to come to work every day and know that your house is in shambles and there's so much to do. thank God I worked for such a good family. These guys stepped up and gave me some time off, let me work on my house. They helped out monetarily and got people in my house working on it to get us back in, to help get us back in. Not only the community, but they sure helped pay it forward to me and my family and try and get me back as square as I could. Because it's still pretty hard to come in and try and run a shop when you're just in shambles everywhere else.
Oh, yeah. I imagine just being able to keep your head on straight and concentrate on the task at hand is almost impossible because all you're thinking about is back home, that your sanctuary, it's not there anymore, or at least not in the fashion that you want it to be there.
Yeah, correct. We were probably out of our home 8 months, maybe.
Wow.
And Roger has some other properties and that stuff needed built, and they were trying to prioritize, and they helped us out a ton. But I would say, I know they had to get the girls' offices going, a bunch of other stuff, the front offices and the truck shop, where more than just what a 2-person office and the trailer shop needed. So that kind of got put off for a little bit while they got the more integral part of everything running. But I would say it was probably 5 months by the time we got our offices back in our trailer shop. But that didn't hinder us too much. Literally, we were in there the next day after we got everything out, cleaned out. It probably took us about 2 weeks to get all of the trailers that were here up and running again. And then we were business as usual after that.
That's amazing. I think that really speaks to how good you all are at your job to be able to an operation like that. If you've ever walked into one, and I know a lot of the people that are listening to this, probably all of them have, it's no small operation. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of tools. There's a lot of technology. To be able to be back up and running that quick is just an amazing feat. It really shows how good Liquid Trucking is at trucking, I think, in general. Going all the way back to episode 8 here. Episode 8 was entitled Driver Hotline, Stories from the Road. And the intent with this episode was to get some of the wildest, craziest stories that you drivers had to tell us. And we got some great stuff here, actually. We were talking with, we had Drew Hearn and Tony Brown on the show first. And then we also had Matt McKellar and Mike Stanfield as well. 4 guys that have made many appearances on the Liquid Trucking podcast. And, it just felt right to replay some of their content here because out of all the drivers I've had, these are 4 that have come on literally anytime I've needed them, and they've really helped me out with a lot of podcast content. So without further ado, here in our Best of the Liquid Trucking podcast episode, we're going to get some content from Drew Hearn, Tony Brown, Mike Stanfield, and Matt McKellar from episode 8, Driver Hotline, Stories from the Road. Well, that's awesome. I do want to say thank you for your service. 21 years in the military. That is a distinguished military career. And I'm always very appreciative of gentlemen like yourselves because I could never, my dad even suggested it to me. I was a little bit of a ruffian in high school. And he's like, what do you think about the military? It's like, Dad, they would eat me alive in the military. So I have a big spot in my heart for military servicemen. And thank you very much for your service.
I greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much. Yeah, it was my honor to do what I did. And like being in the military, that's a way for someone to serve their country. But I look at driving a truck as just another way because I'm serving the people of this country.
Well, you definitely are. And without truck drivers, we would not be able to move this country along. And it's amazing to me that sometimes that gets lost on people, how much you guys actually do for keeping the country moving. And as Drew joins us from his 10-hour break, which isn't very long, I want to ask you, Drew, you and I got to talk back when I was at the Liquid Terminal the very first time, kind of figuring out what you guys wanted out of your podcast. And you told me that you used to take some trips way across the United States as a young kid from Nebraska all the way over here to my neck of the woods in Oregon. Were those long drives that you took with your family part of why you got into truck driving?
Yeah, a little bit. My grandparents took us around everywhere, and my grandma always let me sit shotgun with my grandpa. And, this was before, you could hop on your cell phone and look at, Google Maps or anything. And I read straight from a road map and got my grandpa pretty much anywhere we wanted to go. So been pretty much with them a good portion of the country. And I just love being out and seeing stuff and everything. And then it also helped that, my grandpa, he had a Class A also. He was a local driver for the city of Omaha. And then my great-grandpa, he was a CDLA driver too, and he was actually one of the first people in Nebraska to get his doubles and triples license when they started allowing that. So, it was kind of, it skipped a generation, but I kind of picked up where they, went and got their Class A's, and I figured, why not,
For sure. It might have skipped a generation, but it sounds like it's still in the blood for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So, talk to me a little bit, Tony. I'll start with you here. With these driver hotline episodes, I want to get into the nitty gritty of the stuff that you guys deal with out there on the road. And I'm wondering if you got any crazy stories for me, Tony. And these can be anywhere from, you got a crazy driver out there. Maybe you've mixed up with somebody at the truck stop or anything like that. What do you got for me? Just surprise me here.
Oh, goodness. Being only over the road now for 2 years, I wouldn't say I've seen it all, but I want to say that I've almost seen it all. I've probably seen about 90%, 95% of what you can see. I've had my skirmishes at truck stops from being cut off by other drivers. You got the drivers that want to take their 30-minute break, sit at the fuel island. You got the crazy four-wheelers that think they're king of the road, especially once you cross state line into Texas. Yep, sure is. I believe it. Some people think I'm crazy, but I've talked to other drivers, and some of us, I actually prefer driving anywhere in California, even though they have 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. I would rather drive anywhere in California, because I've driven downtown San Francisco during rush hour with a load of alcohol, and I would take that over crossing the state line into Texas any day of the week.
Really?
Because once you cross into Texas, it's a whole other country. It's a war zone on the highways.
Well,
it is. It really is, though.
That is so interesting to me, Tony, because 99% of the drivers that I talk to, and that's not a conservative estimate, 99% of them hate California with every fiber of their being. And you're sitting here telling me, send me to California every day of the week and twice on Sunday if you keep me out of Texas.
Well, because the funny part is when I was in the military, I was stationed in California for a while. I've been state line to state line. I've seen all of California. I know the traffic patterns in California. I know where to drive and where not to drive, and when to and when not to drive through certain areas of California.
Mm-hmm.
This is where trip planning is crucial. And I plan my trips in and out of California, and where I'm going to be going in California, I set that and I make sure I hit the right areas at the right time, and I can shoot through LA in an hour where other drivers are taking 4 or 5 hours to get through California.
Wow. That's interesting. Drew, what's your take on that Texas versus California conversation?
Well, so California, it's its own entity on its own. It is kind of a nice thing that, the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, because we get paid by the hour. So the slower we're going, the longer it takes us to get through California, which means we're getting paid more, which is kind of nice. So it's nothing to, throw the cruise on, kick back, and enjoy the, the grapevine running through California. Texas, on the other hand, they're something else, man. There is no care in the world for anyone else on the road. It is, it's kind of a toss-up between Atlanta and the whole state of Texas on which one is that is so 100% accurate. It is, man. They just the both of them combined could just float off into abyss for all I care, you know. It's a constant battle, you know. Just today, you know, because I'm sitting down here in Dallas and just trying to get in and just trying to merge a lane over, and no one wants to let you in whatsoever. You can have your blinker on for a mile or two, and everyone is trying to race up in front of you because you're a big truck. They all think that you're slow and everything. Then we have to slow way down. And then with us being the tankers, we got that surge going on the whole time, you know, speeding up, slowing down, speeding up, slowing down. So it's just a battle to get through, you know, Texas, Atlanta, Chicago, any of the major hub cities. You know, it's just a continuous battle because everyone's trying to beat everyone to get 5 feet ahead.
Sure.
Yep. It's the race to be in first place.
Yes, exactly.
And that race never changes. I just made a pilgrimage across the state of Oregon here where I'm from to go see family over the holidays. And I was behind a guy on I-5 and he was darting in and out of traffic. We only had 2 lanes on that portion of the freeway. He was cutting truck drivers off. He was, he'd passing people on the right, get 4 or 5 cars up, and then slam it in where there wasn't room for his garbage little 2012 Honda Civic. And when I took my exit, I noticed the first stoplight I came to, I pulled up right next to that son of a bitch. And it really, it's like you're going to put all these people's lives in danger. This is honestly like it's like a bit from a comedy movie. Like, it couldn't have been funnier to me to see how hard he worked to get in first place for me, who was somewhere back in the middle of the pack, to pull up right next to him at the stoplight.
Oh yeah,
you gotta hurry up to stop. That's what it is. Yep. You gotta hurry up to stop.
Yep, and I see that is a daily occurrence. Deal with that every day.
Is there anything that can be done other than maybe a little bit more policing for the four-wheelers out there that can stop that type of behavior? Or is that just something like, rain and snow? We just live with it because we have to.
So, if I may, that has always been one of my biggest complaints is the government, the FMSCA, they're all crashing down so hard on us truck drivers. That we're the dangerous ones on the road. But you look at the statistics, it just came out again. 75% of motor vehicle accidents involving large trucks are actually at fault of the four-wheelers.
Yep.
But we're the dangerous ones. We're the ones that are getting regulated tooth and nail and raked over the coals. But the thing is, if law enforcement in some of these areas would actually do their job and actually enforce these traffic laws, people are going to start, it's time to start making examples, to be 100% honest with you. If they're not going to enforce the laws, why do they have them?
Sure. It seems to me like that might be a really good case for like reckless driving, what I saw the guy doing. And look, you don't want a reckless driving on your record. That's not a cheap ticket. And it's not one that the judge is just going to throw out because you're right, Tony. It's an example type situation. You need to put the rubber stamp on this guy's head, almost like a scarlet letter. So if anybody does run his plates, the next time, maybe the officers of the law out there on our great highways and byways can be watching for that type of behavior. But that also seems, I was on the road for 7 hours over the weekend, and I only saw 3 cops. It was over 500 miles. I'm sure that you guys can speak to that. In your position, Drew, I'll go to you here. Do you want to see more police on the road to try to change things like that? Or would you rather they keep this kind of 3 per 500 miles that you might see? What's your take?
3 for 500 miles is more than I see most of the time. I can drive all day and never see one, and I'm hitting 3, maybe even 4 states a day if I'm on a run where I'm just driving, and I won't see a single one. So, yeah, I believe that, having a little bit more enforcement out there is going to help. But I also have a different take on it. And, it really starts at the fundamentals of driving. So, these kids that are in high school that are taking these driving classes, to get their lower insurance rates and all this other stuff, stick them in the passenger seat with a truck driver for a day. see what it is really like out there, because you're in your little four wheeler and you got your Starbucks and you're jamming out to your music and phone in hand, and it's just a good old time. And it's really not. The road is our office, and we wouldn't come to your office and make a ruckus. So why should they be able to come to ours and cause problems? So either get people trained properly on how to drive instead of handing a driver's license out to whoever, or we could go back to the way it was the old school days when the interstates were first starting being built. Military and commercial use only. Let the four-wheelers have the highways and the back roads. Let them deal with all their crap back there while we get the business.
Sure.
Interstate commerce.
I mean, I'll tell you guys, that terrifies me as a four-wheeler, but I totally understand where you're coming from.
I'm sure you'd hate that 55 going cross-country, the whole way, because most back highways are 55 to 65, So, I mean, you'll hit a couple 70, 75 once in a while, but not very often.
Yeah, especially if you're in Texas. They got two lanes with no shoulders that are 75 miles an hour.
Oh, wow. And everybody's doing 90, I'm sure, out in Texas.
Oh, yeah.
That's the, I think that's whenever you're giving your driver's license in Texas, you're told whatever the speed limit is, just make sure it's 80.
Yeah. The speed limit is just a suggestion. You do what you want out here,
Yeah.
That reminds me, I was with my dad years ago up in, I think it was in Washington, and I, to be honest with you, I don't even remember if I was with him, but he got pulled over and the cop saw my dad's out-of-state driver's license, and he said, "Sir, I just want to remind you that in our state, the speed limit is not a suggestion." And it's always really stuck with me, because I got to say, in most of my driving experience, the speed limit does seem like a suggestion to most people, not a hard limit. Most people, excluding you truck drivers, because you guys do have to live with it, or else you're putting your job at jeopardy. And it's interesting to me, that dichotomy between four-wheelers and truck drivers. The four-wheelers get to do a lot more of whatever the hell they want, and lo and behold, when you look at the result of that, you've got a lot of them just acting like general idiots out there on the road, or not paying attention, or not trying to be safe. You guys, it seems like every move that you make has safety in mind first. And it's a real shame that that's not the way that everybody out there on the road carries on.
Because, most states, you get a 5 mile an hour leeway. Unless you are in a commercial vehicle, 1 mile an hour over the speed limit can have you stopped and fully inspected.
Wow.
Yep, sure can. If we're speeding, it's like we're a giant banner, just please pull me over, pull me in for an inspection,
Sure.
So yeah, speeding is a big deal for, any big truck driver, you got to really watch it. So
my number one pet peeve is people that like to speed through construction zones.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really dangerous. And you know what? Those guys are out there a lot like you guys, putting their life on the line to try to make the trip better for everyone else. And it's amazing that some people just kind of take that for granted and fly through there. You got a guy standing right on the shoulder and somebody whips by him at 75 miles an hour. I imagine if I was a construction worker, there would just be a puddle underneath of wherever I was standing, seeing people drive by like that.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
This episode is kind of just about your stories, and I want to just jump right into that pool. Mike, I'm going to start with you. What is it? What story to you sticks out in your head now that you've been driving for a bit? You've got some experience under your belt. Is there any story that you could tell us, good, bad, or ugly, that might entertain some of the other drivers listening out there right now?
Yeah, there's one, and every time I get asked about stories about truck driving, this is the one that comes up the most, and it just recently happened. It was last year around this time. I was delivering a load of molasses to a customer's farm in South Dakota, and around this time last year, it was pretty cold. I mean, it was like -5 without the windshield. Ice and snow all over the ground, but I get there. Long story short, the guy has two tanks. One's like a clear tank, one's not clear. And, he's like, hey, when you're done with this tank, when it's full, start filling it up in this one. I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm standing out there, freezing my butt off, watching this tank. I'm like, okay, I can see where the line is at, where I need to stop. So I'm standing out there, and it's been like 30, 40 minutes, something like that. I'm like, it's got to be getting close to the top. As soon as I said that, molasses just starts raining out of the top of it. So I'm like, oh crap. And luckily I'm outside standing right there. So I run over to the valves, and the rule is when you're switching tanks, you open one before you close one. So I opened one, closed the other one. I'm like, all right, cool. But now I've got molasses all over me. I mean, all over my jacket, all over my hat, my beard, my face, my arms, my legs. I'm just covered in molasses. And it's freezing outside. So, I mean, this stuff gets pretty thick. Even when it's hot, once it starts cooling down, it gets really sticky. So I'm filling up the other tank. Well, I thought I was filling up the other tank, but I didn't actually open up the other valve. Well, I didn't close the right valve. I closed the main valve. So once I got the valve switched around, I started unloading into the other tank. Well, I'm standing out there, and I'm wiping myself down with baby wipes, because I'm sure most truck drivers have baby wipes just for this reason. So I'm standing out there, and I'm watching. And I'm like, okay, it's been like 40 minutes. It's got to be getting close to the top. So I climb up to the top of my trailer to see how much product I have left in my trailer. And when I do that, I see product just flowing out of the back side of the tank that I couldn't see. And so I get down there, I shut off my pump, I reverse it a little bit, and then shut it off. And so I call the guy, the customer, and he's like, well, there should have been enough room. He's like, I'm going to come pick you up in my tractor, and we're going to go look for another tank. I'm like, oh, okay. So he comes, picks me up in his tractor. I hop in there with him, and we're scouring his farm for another tank. Found one, and now I've became his farmhand, trying to get this tank back over to the truck. We get it over there. I had to fix the valve. I finished unloading the product. Now this guy was so thrilled that I was happy to help him around the farm, even though I wasn't. That he wanted to know if I would move a tanker trailer that he had stored in a barn. And that's where you kind of have to draw the line, because we're not authorized to move other tanks that aren't the company's, because it's a liability and insurance problems and stuff like that. Long story short, I was out there for about 8 hours trying to do all this. I was covered in molasses. My beard was frozen, and I just wanted to leave. And that was the worst day that I've had in a year and a half at Liquid Trucking. And pretty much in trucking in general, because it was horrible. It was just absolutely horrible. But yeah, that's a fun one that people like to enjoy. They kind of crack up about it a little bit.
Yeah, I guess so, man. I guess so. It covered in molasses is, look, I'm probably one of few people that has a little bit of experience with molasses. And it fortunately enough, it wasn't myself, but I used to be on a radio show where we had a Super Bowl bet once. And the loser, we put him in an adult diaper, and we covered him in molasses, and when we rolled him in oats, and we had a donkey lick him clean. And it was, that donkey, and the donkey could lick something for 10 hours and never get tired. That donkey could not get that guy cleaned off. So I imagine when you add temperatures that close to zero, plus getting it in your beard and your hair and everything else, man, no thank you. That does not sound like a good day at work.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. It was not fun at all.
How about you, Matt? You got a story like that floating around in your head?
Sure. I actually also had a story about a customer not realizing how full their tank was and it overflowing, but I will switch to a different story. So it's a day that I had last summer that kind of encapsulates the challenges and the highlights of trucking. I was running these loads out of Fort Dodge, Iowa, where we run this lysine, which is like an additive to animal feed. So you bring it around to a bunch of feed mills. They're usually kind of local, regional runs. So I had two of them to do this day. I get to the first one, pull up to the feed mill, and I have a rear dump trailer And so I get lined up going the one way and I start pumping everything off and it's working just fine. Well, as the product comes off, the rear of the trailer raises ever so slightly because there's less weight on it. And then I realized there was actually a hill running away from the tank where I was unloading into. So the rest of the product won't get where it needs to go, to the rear valve. So I literally had to shut off my pump, blow out the lines, unhook everything, pull out, turn around, come back the other way, get rehooked up so that the angle was right, if that makes sense, and pump the rest of the product off, which was probably only like 400 gallons or something at that point, but to get the rest off. So then I rush. I'm a little late for my second load. I try to make up some time. I get way over in eastern Iowa, and it's summertime, so nice long days of daylight, which is helpful in this job. And I'm unloading at that feed mill again, and everything goes smoothly. I'm climbing up on top of the trailer, like Mike was saying, just keep an eye on the level. Sometimes I like to sit up there for a few minutes and I just remember watching this beautiful sunset, basically, as I sat up there monitoring my trailer, and just kind of encapsulated the day, the challenges, but just ended on a really beautiful moment,
Sure. Well, I mean, it's nice that you have that moment that, kind of finishes the day off well. Nothing better than a nice sunset out there in Iowa, I'm sure. It kind of brings me to something that I want to ask both of you about this, but is it challenging to maintain a good demeanor? And Mike, I'll start with you here. Is it challenging to maintain a good demeanor when you're having a day like that? Because I know customer service is a really important part of the job.
Yeah, it's huge. 90% of, this whole industry is customer service. But absolutely. I mean, you have days where you're driving and everybody's just cutting you off and brake checking you, and you're just wanting to get to the customer safely so you can unload or load, and then you get there and maybe the guard is kind of a butthead to you, and the loader is not being very friendly, and it is definitely hard. And there's been times where I have just kind of gotten a little argumentative, but it's not very often because I know that it's part of my job to make sure that these customers keep wanting us to come back. They keep wanting to use Liquid Trucking, because without Liquid Trucking, I don't have a job. So yeah, it is definitely hard. Sometimes you just gotta smile through it. Clench your teeth and smile through it. So
how about you, Matt? How do you navigate those waters?
Yeah, I guess I'd answer that in a couple of ways. First is, you asked Mike earlier what he likes about working with Liquid Trucking. And for me, one of the major pros is that the customers we go to treat us so much better on the whole. Like before this, I drove refrigerated freight reefer, and you're in these giant grocery warehouses and everybody acts like you're some sort of plague or something like that. But here, like 95% of the shippers and receivers are decent, friendly people. It's the exceptions that make you grit your teeth and all of that. And in fact, meeting people out here has been one of the best things. Like I get chit-chatting with the loader, while we're waiting for the product to load or whatever. And I've met all kinds of interesting people, diverse walks of life out here on the road. But yeah, Mike's right. It gets stressful and some days just don't go your way. But that's why I really enjoy having the time out on the road, whether I'm just listening to music or looking at the scenery or just sitting in the quiet. I'm just kind of collecting my thoughts. Like I find I have a lot of personal space, so it's actually kind of a very spiritual experience for me being out here, which usually leaves me in a good frame of mind. And I find that my stress level is way, way down. Driving a tank full of hazardous material is way less stressful than anything I did before.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. And, I think that's always kind of good advice for anybody in any walk of life, is to find the good in what you're doing, even if you are having that bad day. I mean, listen, I'm surrounded by so much electrical equipment here. If I had any hair left on the back of my head, it'd be standing up because of all the static electricity. And a lot of the times, for whatever reason, the stuff that's supposed to work seamlessly just doesn't. And I'll tell you, having a kickboxing bag up here that I could just unload on would really help me out. But I try to find the fun in it because, look, I get to talk to you guys for a living. Like it's a really cool thing that I get to do, and I appreciate that little bit of insight from you, Matt, because finding the good in a bad day isn't always easy, but it definitely makes that bad day shorter than what it would have been if you can't find that good.
Yeah, exactly. Well put.
So, Mike, it's kind of funny that we're talking about this because we're actually recording this right now a little bit off schedule. because both of you guys have been kind of dealing with some off-schedule things that have happened during your day. Mike, talk to me a little bit about what's going on with you right now, because something's happening to you that's out of your control, and you're kind of just in limbo right now, right?
Yeah. So some of these places that we go to, they require certain things to be able to get loaded. Wash ticket, with seals. Sometimes you need a previous bill of lading. This place that I'm at in Freeport, Texas, they're wanting an SDS, which is a safety data sheet, which doesn't make any sense because what was on the trailer before was corn steep, and that's basically a food grade product, and we don't usually get SDSs for that. So they won't load me because of that. So I'm sitting here now, waiting to find out what I'm going to do next. And actually, my dispatcher, James, just texted me, told me to head back to Houston to swap trailers with somebody. So after this, I'm going to be heading out and going that way. But yeah, and it happens more than what we would like to admit, but it happens. It's part of the job. And luckily we get paid for, downtime. So
sure. Now, it's funny because you bring up Texas. I was just talking to another liquid driver, Drew Hearn. He's out there in Texas as well. And he and another driver I had on actually brought up the fact that Texas is kind of one of those places that's a little bit like a war zone for drivers. And I'm interested to know what your guys' thoughts are, because in my travels, I've talked to a lot of drivers from a lot of different companies at this point. And there's two places that always come up when I ask them, where's your least favorite place to drive? I get California and I get Atlanta. But recently I just was told that Texas is a real nightmare, kind of a headache type place to go through. Add to the fact that it's the biggest state that we're going to drive in anytime soon. So what are your thoughts on Texas since you're sitting there in the belly of the beast right now, Mike?
I don't mind it too much. Traffic is a nightmare most of the times, but if they would regularly send me down here during the wintertime, I'd absolutely love it, but it seems like always during the wintertime I'm going up north, summertime I'm always going south. But yeah, Houston and Dallas are, 24/7 pretty much nightmares, unless you're driving like in the middle of the night, but pretty much throughout the day from 6 o'clock in the morning till maybe midnight, you're going to be running into a crap load of traffic, and it can be pretty stressful with how some of these people drive. So yeah, it's up there with some of the places that I do not like to drive.
How about you, Matt? Your thoughts on Texas and maybe some other places that you'd rather not go if you had your choice?
Well, I agree with the Atlanta thing. Avoid that at all costs. I actually don't mind California because it's a beautiful state. And like Mike was saying earlier, yeah, the speed limit's 55, but we get paid by the hour. So, just set the cruise and roll slow and collect your pay, So I don't mind. I was out there 2 weeks ago. Texas, yeah, is interesting. I like West Texas. I had a load down to Odessa a couple weeks ago, like the oil fields and all that. And that's just such an interesting landscape and a lot more remote and rugged. But yeah, Houston and Dallas tend to get pretty busy. But the weather is nice. Like Mike's saying, I did a bunch of loads down there this summer when it was like 100, 110. And so in my mind, I thought, well, that's fine as long as I get down there this winter too. And I have once or twice. So that's been all right. I'll definitely take it over Minnesota this time of year.
110, man. I'm from the Pacific Northwest, born and raised. It's like if you want to average it out, it's 70 and raining. That's what we're always dealing with here. And so 110, I don't mess with that very much. Are those hot days harder on you, or are the cold days harder on you, Matt?
Physically, I think the hot days are harder because you can definitely get heat stroke, heat exhaustion, things like that. And I've learned in my life that it's a lot easier to have those things happen than you realize. And you start to get a little foggy headed even, which isn't a good thing when you're unloading a tank full of something. So you have to be really careful to stay hydrated, stay cool, stay in the shade if you can. But the cold is much worse because trucks, have problems in the cold. Products have problems in the cold, like the story earlier with the molasses kind of freezing up and all of that. So there's just a lot more to deal with in terms of the job when it's cold. So pros and cons, I guess.
Sure, absolutely. Well, it's interesting, bringing up heat exhaustion. You're exactly right. I didn't know how easy it was to get heat exhaustion drinking like a case and a half of beer next to a pool in Vegas, but it happened to me. And learn my lesson for sure. Stay hydrated. That's sage advice. What about you, Mike? Hot or cold? What would you rather deal with? What's worse on you?
Oh man, so hot is definitely something that I struggle with because first of all, I'm overweight. Second of all, we have to wear hazmat suits, a lot of the time when we're unloading stuff, and have to stay out there with the product, and while you're pumping off, and being in a hazmat suit when it's 110 degrees makes it feel like it's 120, 130 degrees, and I've almost overheated a couple times. I've had to shut off my pump and hop in my truck and cool off for a minute. Wintertime, I don't like to drive in the wintertime most of the time because of the ice. But so far this year, we've been pretty lucky. But if I stay around the Midwest, it's usually okay. Unloading and stuff like that, like Matt said, can be difficult because you got pumps freezing up, you got valves freezing up, you got brakes freezing up, product that is just slowing down because it's so cold. There's cons to both, and there's not really many pros.
A beautiful fall day is ideal.
I gotcha.
Yes,
On episode 11 of the Liquid Trucking Podcast, we had a very fun and interesting conversation about the legalization of marijuana across the United States and the impact that legalization will have on trucking. Now, there was a lot of questions asked. We actually, early in the episode, we had recruiter Nick Meyer on from Liquid Trucking, and he talked us through a little bit about what recruiters are looking for, what they're telling drivers, and so on. And if you want to hear that part of the of the episode, make sure you go back and listen to episode 11 of the Liquid Trucking Podcast. But this part here that we're going to replay for you is actually a fun conversation I had with Jason Eisenman and safety consultant from safety management services company, Garrett Larson. We talk safety. We talk about the impact of the marijuana legalization and some pickles that drivers can get themselves into if they're not super careful and really understand the laws that govern trucking, not necessarily marijuana. So here's a clip again with Garrett Larson from Safety Management Services Company and, of course, VP of Safety and HR from Liquid Trucking, Jason Eisen. Well, perfect. You're going to be the ideal guest for today's topic because what we're talking about does definitely have to do with some safety concerns, and that is basically the changing landscape of marijuana and or cannabis, whatever you prefer to call it, legalization and decriminalization across the United States. Now, obviously, we all know the federal government has not budged at all on this. This is a Schedule I substance. But in talking with you, Jason, we've kind of kicked this idea around because you don't really feel like this is talked about enough within the industry, do you?
I don't. I think that it is a really big topic that's kind of like hiding behind a bush right now. And it can affect a trucking company, an insurance company, like Garrett's that he works with, and all the trucking companies that he works with, and all the drivers that work here, on such a really big level, because our drivers, and my passion lies with the fact that if they have, testing that's marijuana positive, they have such a road to get back to work that, that the government puts in place through the return to duty process, and then, possibly stack that with the fact that maybe they got into an accident and that's how he found out that they were positive for marijuana. And that can be really bad because then, as Garrett will also agree, that insurance companies get hit with large lawsuits along with trucking companies like ourselves. We're partially self-funded, and the lawyers, the plaintiff lawyers out there, use those positive tests for marijuana to really exploit those awards in court. So it's a really big deal on many levels.
Have you seen a lot of legislation like that, or not legislation, but litigation, sorry, Garrett, in your line of work concerning marijuana, of course?
I mean, anytime there is a claim, so when you hear me talking about accidents, you're going to hear me talk about it in terms of the claim. Anytime we have a claim where there is a positive drug or alcohol test, that is going to dictate a lot about how that claim is going to play out in terms of dollars and cents. So whether that affects the company who's paying their insurance premiums or the insurance company, all the way on up to the courts themselves, because a lot of the times these things are litigated in court. And anytime that you have a positive drug or alcohol test, you're really increasing the value of where that claim is going to go in a negative way for a lot of companies. And you're kind of already seeing, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but you're kind of already seeing an increase in insurance premiums in the private automobile sector. You know, everybody's insurance rates seem to be going up. Well, when there are accidents, right, and when those accidents cost more money, that gets spread out across insurance, right? You kind of got to think about it as a big umbrella. So as these claims happen and as verdicts get bigger and bigger and bigger, so does the cost for companies like Liquid Trucking to pay their insurance premiums, you know, and maintain competitive, you know, pay for drivers, because you know money always comes from somewhere.
For sure. And, you know, in speaking to that, you know, you're saying increased insurance rates. My sister is my insurance agent, and it was awkward at Christmas dinner. I'll tell you that much, because I keep getting these letters and the rates just keep going up, like you're saying. And Jason, you mentioned, you know, it's not really talked about enough. I'm sitting here right now looking at the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse stats from the U.S. Department of Transportation in concert with the FMCSA. And since January of 2020, they have identified cannabis or marijuana in a drug test positively 133,805 times. The next closest substance to that has only been identified 36,500 times. I think that right there paints the picture for why we're even having this conversation with all of the changing laws in different states. And is it legal medically? Is it legal recreationally? Is it just decriminalized? It's very confusing to know what state you're in, what the rules are. And I think that it's important that we talk about, Jason, there's kind of a good overarching rule for cannabis and truck drivers, and that's just kind of don't do it, right? You can't ever be sure. You can't ever be 100% safe. So if you want to protect your CDL license, you want to protect your truck and the company, stay away from the stuff. Am I accurate there, Jason?
100%. In fact, you know, it is a law. You know, it's a federal law. You know, it is not allowed. And if you're going to hold, and I should caveat that with saying, if you're holding a commercial driver's license, Class A, B, etc., testing positive for marijuana is going to get you reported to the clearinghouse. And as a carrier, we have certain steps we have to follow. As a driver, you have certain steps to follow if you want to get back behind the wheel. And that return to duty process can be costly, can be cumbersome at the house, you know, if you're not working and earning money to pay the bills. And that's the personal, like, attachment point for me, because I've had in the last 5 years, you know, we've had 2 or 3 guys, one of them being someone that worked here for a long time, 7+ years, get you know, have a positive test, and you're like, man, what are you doing? Yeah, that's your livelihood. And it's all, you know, in reality, it's all of our livelihood, because we're all at the same place working with the kind of uniform goal of serving our customers. But if we get ourselves in a predicament with a wreck, and then you're positive on top of it, you're talking about affecting the possible livelihood of all of us, because, you know, companies that get hit with those big nuclear verdicts that you hear about and read about, you know, multi-million dollars, 10, 20, 30 million dollars, you know, that's the gravity of this situation. When you get behind the wheel of a truck and you've done marijuana of some type, and we're going to come back and talk about that, because, you know, but when you do that, you're putting a lot of people at risk, your fellow drivers, office staff, you know, everybody. So the availability of it is also the scary part. And I think Garrett and you would agree that you could drive through the streets of Omaha, and we have stores on the corner that sell varying degrees of marijuana that's legal in Nebraska. And if you go over to Iowa, varying degrees of marijuana is sold there. And if you go down into Missouri and out to Colorado, so where we're located, it's surrounding us in each state. And our drivers are passing through these states. They live in these areas. But the fact of the matter is, no matter what state you're in or what store is selling it, if you have a CDL and you're driving a truck, it's just a no-go zone.
For sure. And, something that you kind of touched on a little bit there, Jason, CBD is very popular. And for those of you that are wondering, why with the onslaught of initials that we're about to get to here with THC and CBD, they're just different compounds in the plant. And if I sound a little bit educated on this, it is because I did work in the industry, the legal cannabis industry. I wasn't selling out of my back trunk at a Sears or anything like that, but I was in it for about 5 years. I did a lot of research on this stuff, and CBD, cannabidiol, that stuff is legal federally. It can be shipped in the mail. You can order it online, but there is a very important guideline there, and that is that about 0.3% of THC is allowed in a CBD product. And that means that even if you're trying to just use CBD, which is a non-psychoactive substance, a lot of people have luck with, joint pain or different kinds of ailments that they use it for. A lot of people think that it's just safe to take that and it's not going to show up on a drug test. Well, let me tell you something. From experience, if you're taking it and it does have that 0.3% THC, it will show up on a drug test and it will ruin your career. Or at least maybe not ruin your career, but as Jason said, put everybody else in jeopardy, including yourself. Sorry, I tend to be a little hyperbolic at times, Jason. I think that's why they put me in charge of the podcast.
Yeah, no worries. I wanted to ask Garrett, I was really excited about this talk today, because, and just to give a little more background on Garrett and our relationship with Liquid Trucking, Garrett comes in a couple times a year in person and multiple times a year on phone calls or Zoom calls. And, collectively we're working to make everybody operate safer and think about all those things collectively, from equipment to policies and practices. So when Garrett does that with a whole bunch of other trucking companies, I was kind of excited to ask him, like, what are some of the stories you've heard, the pros and cons, maybe the good and the bad, through other trucking companies that are still, battling this marijuana transition across America where it's becoming more legal, but it's still not legal for truck drivers in any capacity.
That's a pretty interesting conversation. I love that we're having it. And Jason, you nailed it on the head. When it comes to marijuana and marijuana products, as a truck driver, it is a no, a no, a no. And that is because you're underneath federal regulations that deal with marijuana, right? So you're held to a federal standard, regardless of the state you're in, regardless of the county, drill it down to the municipality. It doesn't matter. You're held to those federal standards. So we all know, that includes your pre-employment drug testing. That also includes you into the random drug testing for drug and alcohol that is conducted by your company, right? So one thing that I do as for the insurance company is I review whether or not a company is compliant with those federal regulations. I look at the rates for your randoms. The government dictates that you test a certain percentage of your drivers. Well, due to a statistic that was shared by Marcus earlier in the increase in marijuana positives in drug testing, when I got into trucking, it was 25%. 25% of your fleet needed to be tested for drugs. In a few years, because of that statistic you heard, it's now 50%. You are drug testing 50% of your driver pool at any given time when you run a random. You're in a safety sensitive job function, and as professional drivers, you really do have to understand the ramifications of your decisions when you're operating a tractor trailer. Just as any other profession, you are expected, because you're professionals, to hold yourself to a professional standard. It can affect you as a driver, so your future as a driver. One thing I do, as well as I review new hire driver qualification files, and I look at your violation history, both in your personal vehicle, your commercial vehicle. And one of the expectations that is held for the clients that I work with is they will not hire drivers who have had drug and alcohol issues going back, I believe off the top of my head, 7 years. The clearinghouse was created to have a database of drug and alcohol violations. So the days of, drug and alcohol violations not necessarily following you from employer to employer to employer, they're gone. We can track through that query we run before hiring you if you've failed a mandated DOT drug test at any time. So it can follow you professionally, and depending on how the violation for say marijuana comes along, it's a little different when you have a positive test for a random, right? Opposed to you're pulled over and you receive a violation for operating the tractor under the influence of, say, marijuana or even alcohol, right? Those types of violations, those also affect the drivers that you work with, and they affect it so in your company's drug and alcohol CSA value. That's a value that I look at for companies, that customers of companies look at, and it's a percentile that the government puts together that basically tells the world how that company performs in terms of drug and alcohol violations. When companies show that they have a lot of those violations, if they don't correct those issues going forward, it will put them out of business. And like Jason was saying, those types of decisions really do affect more than just you. When those CSA scores go up, whether it's for drug and alcohol, unsafe driving, hours of service, vehicle maintenance, when you have those violations, they cause the government to pull all your fellow drivers in for inspection more often. So it can really affect you, even if you're the guy who's flying on the straight and narrow, if you're kind of embedded with some people making poor decisions, you're going to spend a lot more time, under the scrutiny of vehicle enforcement, going over your logs, looking at your truck. So if we're talking, your career in terms of dollars and cents, it can end it. I don't, me personally, I can't afford to go 2, 3, maybe even 4 months without getting a paycheck. But if you get let go, from your company for a positive drug test, and then you have to go through a SAP program and you have to go through drug and alcohol counseling. And I mean, it's no different than a DUI. I feel that in trucking, we're all so terrified of a DUI. I don't know if I've ever talked to anybody who holds a CDL that's not terrified to get a DUI because they know it could end their career. Mm-hmm. This is the same thing. And, marijuana is not going away. It doesn't mean that the federal government won't eventually reevaluate how we regulate these things. But the fact of the matter is currently, the expectations are that you do not participate in the use of that substance. And when you do, it can cause, a lot of issues for you personally, as well as, your coworkers and the people that rely on them to make money as well.
Sure. And you can't, you don't know when it's going to leave your system, so there's no way to game this system. I know a lot of people would like to think that they could go to a record store and buy a fluorescent orange drink and drink it and then pass a drug test the next day. That type of stuff is largely fantasy in my experience. And I did want to touch on something, though, Garrett, there that you brought up. What is the difference in the way that the FMCSA looks at a DUI with a CDL as opposed to just a failed test? Are there different criteria for getting back behind the wheel? Or if you get a DUI with a CDL, is that the end of it for good? I'm not familiar with the laws surrounding that, so educate me a little bit.
Oh, no, not necessary. It's not a hard button you could never drive again type of deal. But what I will tell you this, specific to, say, a DUI. A DUI, it's hard to come back from because insurance companies are going to go back, and I may have quoted 7 years before. I believe it's actually 5. I'm going to go back at least 5 years. Well, in that 5 years before that DUI is, 5 years old, right? That whole time where you need to be making money, it's going to be very difficult for you to find employment. You're looked at as an insurance risk. You made a decision that paints you on paper as more likely than not to be involved in a crash, right? So similarly with any drug, right? If you get caught operating the vehicle while under the influence of a drug, some states, at least I'll speak to Missouri. I know how I live in Kansas City, so I know how it works in the state of Missouri. There's two sides to a DUI or a DWI, right? Whatever it is. One is going to be your driver's license. It can affect your license. So a DUI and how it affects your CDL, yes, they are going to make it hell for you to get that CDL back. But in the state of Missouri, at least, there's also a criminal side. So you are charged administratively for your driver's license, so how it affects your CDL, but you're also going to receive a criminal charge that you then have to go to court for. So you're seeing it on two fronts, right? So not only do you have an issue with your license going forward, you're going to have a criminal charge that shows when we run your background, right? So it definitely paints you in a more negative light when you have those types of things happen, opposed to, if you violate on a random, you weren't operating a vehicle. That's a more proactive approach to then getting help. That is why the government put a program in place that says, hey, you violated on a random drug test. We're going to allow you to go through substance abuse counseling. We're going to put you on a more stringent drug testing program. And then if you can comply with those requirements, you can continue to drive. So there is a difference in how the violation occurs, I guess. But the reality of it is, and if you're a company who's looking at whether you want to retain a driver like that or hire a driver like that, they're required by the government to spend more money on you, giving you more drug tests. It costs a company more money to keep you on as a driver than somebody who doesn't have that violation history. So by no means would I want to make anyone think that if you make a mistake in life, your life is over. But it is definitely going to create a lot more hoops for you to jump through, as well as the company that you're working for. And you're going to spend a lot of money. It's not like, when they say go get substance abuse counseling that the company's going to pay for it. That's a cost that's going to come out of your pocket. The government's not paying for it. You are. So, if you want to get back in a truck, you're going to spend money on that counseling. You're going to spend money on an attorney to go protect your license. It's a very costly mistake for something, I have personal friends that drive truck. I have friends that work in construction. I'm former military, so I've still got friends, that are in the service, and they're all held to the same standard. And when you weigh the risk versus reward, yes, there are benefits for the use of medical marijuana that people make those arguments, but is that risk for your livelihood worth the same benefit you may be able to get from ibuprofen or an ice pack or some stretching? Like there's other things you could do. Don't use knee pain or back pain to ruin your life.
Right. And you mentioned the cost down the road. Like inpatient substance abuse counseling or rehab, if you want to call it that. That's not cheap. That's $1,000 a night hotel that you're staying in with a lot of medical professionals around you to help you out. And I got to be honest, I don't think Jason's cutting that check. I think that one's coming out of your pocket, like Garrett was saying. So important to think about the consequences down the road and everything. Jason, I want to go back to you here because I'm trying to put myself in the boots of a driver here. And I was thinking, can you talk me through a little bit what the situation would be if I've just tested positive? I haven't been caught driving under the influence. I've been out on vacation for a few days. Maybe I was at a house party or something like that. I get caught up in this whole wheel. What are the next steps for me? Obviously, you guys know about it. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, so a couple of scenarios there. You have the scenario if you test positive for a random or a pre-employment. Well, if it's pre-employment, that's an easy one. You won't get the job. If it's random, 9 times out of 10, this is where it becomes difficult because, as a small, mid-sized family-owned trucking business, in trying to appease your workforce and regulators and insurers, if you have someone that tested positive on a random and they've been working for you for 10 years, we don't want to cast somebody to the curb and terminate them right away. That's the heartstring part that gets mixed in with all of the firm black and white. So, like I said, it's happened 2 or 3 times, and the most memorable one is we had a driver in Texas or Arizona get pulled into a scale, and the officer smelled marijuana and searched the truck and found a little bit, and we had to fly a driver down there and fly a driver back because we couldn't let him drive any longer. Immediately loses his job. Truck's just sitting there in the middle of nowhere. And that's a big black mark, for the driver and the company, because that's on your record. And you're sitting here thinking, like, what can you do from our shoes, which is why we're here talking about it today, to start educating people more that, if you're going to do something like that, it could be really costly. So what does it look like if you want to get, if you test positive, we've done this, on a random, and you've been working here a long time, and our owners decide that we want to hang tight with this driver for a while and put him through a substance abuse program and the return to duty process and give him an opportunity. And that can be lengthy. I've seen 6 months of drug testing, up to 3 years of drug testing, and you're taking on a huge risk, and you're pushing that risk upstream to your insurers, the folks that Garrett works with, and your captive members. So there's a lot of careful thought that goes into it, from a lot of different angles. And I think that's part of this whole discussion and how it's changing. It's changing in not only how it's viewed in the insurance world, and how it's viewed from an ownership and trucking executive, standpoint, and how you interact with your workforce, and then the government. If you look at the regulation, there's a lot of people calling for change. It hasn't happened, so that's why it's still got to be a firm no. But there's definitely a lot of movement in people saying it needs to change. Well, when is that going to be? A year, 10, 20? For now, you got to still follow the rules.
Yep. I said it earlier in the episode when we were coming up with what we wanted to play on this best of. There was a lot of talk about, well, let's replay some of the most popular stuff. And then there was a lot of talk about, let's replay some of the most informative and educational stuff. And then I got to have my say, which is, can we play some of the most fun stuff? And yes was the answer, of course. They don't tell me no too often. And when they do, I know my place. Don't worry. But when I say most fun, I think this one really kind of rises to the top of a lot of people's lists. We had been trying to do this episode for a really long time. It was episode 28, and it is entitled The Teenage Hotline. I was informed of the Teenage Hotline, which, for those of you that don't know, is a group of drivers at Liquid that spend nearly their entire day every day on a party line just chatting with each other, gossiping, venting, telling jokes, telling stories, getting advice. It's a literal group that just runs perpetually. One driver might duck off for a while because he's got to go load up or unload, or maybe he's going on break, while the rest of the drivers just kind of hang out. I know that we found out during this interview that some drivers will even just leave their phones on and go take care of what they need to take care of, and when they come back, they just pop back in on their headset, and they're there. Well, we finally made it happen where we got the bulk of the Teenage Hotline on the air at the same time. And I'll be honest with you, it's hard for me to remember all of these specific things that we talked about because we talked about so many different things. But the one specific memory I have from this episode is that the hot dogs on the back of my neck hurt from laughing the entire time. It's a really fun episode. If you want to hear the entire thing, you can go check out episode 28 of the Liquid Trucking Podcast. But here it is, my interview with the gentleman from the Teenage Hotline, and I want to give them credit by name here. We had Polar Bear, Matt Cleach, Wendell Yoder, Jason Cranehagen, and John Fry. All at the same time. Get ready to laugh. This is a fun one with the Teenage Hotline. Thank you guys all for being here today.
Yeah, glad to be here.
No problem.
I just
Thanks for having us.
Of course, guys, and this is long overdue. We've talked about this, Polar Bear. The very first time I ever talked to you, you told me about the Teenage Hotline, and you said we got to get them on. And I'm sorry it's taken this long, but I've been absolutely running circles around myself in anticipation for this week. You guys are kind of famous in your own right, and I just want to ask you real quick, since we opened with the theme of the A-Team, before we get into the origins of the Teenage Hotline, Polar Bear, will start with you. If you guys all embodied a character from the A-Team, who would you be? You a face?
Matt already done this earlier.
Okay, all right. Well, tell me what you guys figured out.
Talking. Yeah, Matt, who would you be? Yeah, he's asking you who would you be? No, you remember the A-Team. Yeah, I would be Mr. J then.
You be B.A. Baracus, huh?
Yeah, because I just want to stand and I just want to stand in the background and watch over everything.
Yeah, just look pretty, and just the threat of you getting involved is enough for everybody, right?
Yeah, and I got half of his hairdo there. I just have to do the most.
All right, Wendell, how about you, buddy? Which A-Team character are you?
I would be the crazy one. What was his name? Murdoch. I'd be Murdoch. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That fits.
That fits. Matt, how about you?
I'm gonna go with Yoder. I want to be Murdoch.
Okay. Well, we gotta.
I mean, I could probably be head honcho. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
You're a bit more of a Hannibal. Well, listen, guys. There's only 4 A-Team characters, so one of you is gonna have to be Tia. I hate to tell you, but somebody's gonna have to fill the role, guys. So
I'll do it. I got no shame. I'll do it.
All right, John. I
guess I'd be Face.
You gonna be Face? Okay, I like it. Jason, that might be bad that it fell to you, but
I'm the winner. Heck yeah.
You're Tia. That probably means you're the best looking. You're the best looking of the bunch, though, right?
Yeah, they're all falling for me. It's all good. Yeah.
Oh man, I love it, guys. So talk to me a little bit, Polar Bear. I'm gonna start with you because you kind of were the one that brought this whole thing to my attention. Talk to me about the origins of the Teenage Hotline. How did this whole thing come together?
So it all started with a former driver, which is Wendell's cousin-in-law, that he's the one, he would walk through the break room, see the new ones, and just start getting numbers saying, hey, here's my number if you need any help. And then him and Matt started it first. Right, Matt? Yep. Yeah. Yep. And then I think I was second. I think it was, because there's been 2 or 3 that kicked out of it because they're there you go. I was trying to say it nice.
So wait, why did they get kicked out?
Soft skin. They can't handle the room.
I gotcha.
It's a tough room.
You can't handle being Tia when everybody else is B.A. Baracus, is what you're saying.
Yes.
So Matt, talk to me a little bit. If you're actually one of the longer tenured guys in the Teenage Hotline, did it just all come together right away, or it was kind of a couple of guys and you kind of added people as you went? Like, what's the origin story there?
So it was me and Jeremy. Jeremy brought in Yoder and P-Bear. Amongst Jeremy and amongst Yoder and P-Bear, we had another gentleman named Matt. We brought him in. Another gentleman named Dan. We brought him in at one time with the technology base. We were able to we had 11 people on at one time.
Wow. And
due to technology. And some people got a little butthurt and they ended up, getting proved wrong and just being too soft skinned. So we came down to, over the last probably 2 years, we've really dwindled it down. We're back up again, but there's all 5 of us, another gentleman named Bert, Moses. He jumps in every once in a while, and that's kind of your teen hotline now.
I would say,
Yep.
Okay. So
it's been this way since late 2018, early 2019 is when it started.
wow. Okay, that was going to be my next question. How long? So you guys are in this thing at this point in time, and let me ask you this. This is all kind of reminding me. So my dad has a poker crew, right? And they've been playing poker for 20 years every Thursday night. They take the summers and they take deer season off, but then once the fall hits, they play every Thursday night. And that group has gone through many iterations, but the same core people have still been there. It's kind of, my dad's the ringleader of it now. And there's a line of dudes waiting to get into this poker game, and they can't because it's one table, and they got to wait for somebody to fall off before they get the invite. Is that sort of the kind of game you guys are playing here, where it's like, look, we want to keep it capped so that it doesn't get out of hand? And do you have like a list of potential invitees, or how do you guys go about that?
It kind of stems about the same area. If somebody comes in and we decide that let them in, normally it starts with getting my phone number, and they'll call me, and we'll kind of slide them in and see how they fit with the group. We've shoved a couple out, and we really haven't picked anybody up. We really don't have a waiting list. We have people that might. Yeah, Dwayne. Dwayne's here. He comes and goes. And the biggest reason I did that is he's a buddy of mine, Marcus, and I figured between all 5 of us, we can, we put all of our brain power together, we can probably toast one piece of bread. But, between us 5, we might be able to help him where he's been, because Johnny's been a lot of places. Yoda's been a lot of places, and me and myself and Cleach, and so we were just, that's what I thought would be easiest for him, and something to help break his day up.
Gotcha. So that's a great point there, and maybe we'll go to you, John, here for this one. Talk to me a little bit about how the Teenage Hotline does break your day up. I mean, are you constantly connected to it, or do you jump in and out as the day goes on? Like, what does that look like?
I'm pretty much in there from starting the morning till when everybody starts to, find their place, home for the night. Then we usually kind of kick off, leave it at that. But I'm usually on here pretty much all day. That's it, unless I'm, unloading. Then I usually hang up the headset, but I'm usually still on the line. But
so it's an all day thing.
It's an all day thing. I mean, there's places that I haven't been to before. Kind of good to know. Majority of the guys we have on here, they got so much knowledge on some of the places that I'm new to. So just to pick their brain on a lot of that stuff is super helpful. So it's kind of nice to be on here all day, depending on what direction you got to go.
Sure. And you talk about passing windshield time. Just having a nice, deep, long conversation about anything under the sun is a great way to pass the windshield time, I assume.
It is, because some of the stretches of road that we're on just seems like it drags on for days.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Jason, I'll turn to you for this question. Who's the whipping boy of the group? Because I got a little bit of a peek into that before we actually came on. You guys were dogging on Wendell for being from North Dakota. So
I'm glad I get to answer this one. It's pretty. Well, it'd be Wendell Yoder. He's our North Dakota guy. Kind of Amish.
Kind of Amish. So does that mean he's just got the beard and he doesn't wear the hat, or he doesn't like electricity? What part is Amish?
Well, he's got the beard. He doesn't wear it quite the same hat as an Amish guy as you think, but yeah. No, it's Wendell. I really can't really say why it's Wendell as much as it's just he's so gullible and just like
I don't know. He just takes it so well, and polar bear appreciates him because if it ain't Wendell, it turns to polar bear.
Okay.
And I enjoy it because it's giving Wendell a break, even if he's on there.
Okay, all right. Well, Wendell, I feel like it's finally time we let you speak for yourself here. Do you see yourself as the whipping boy like everyone else clearly sees you as?
Yeah, probably. You talk about having tough skin. Well, I'm kind of like a duck. I just let it all run off,
A good idea, man, because they're laying it on pretty thick from what I can tell.
Oh, no, they do. We have a lot of fun. I give it back too.
Good.
Oh yeah.
It may not be that day. It may not be that day, but maybe it's a day down the road.
Yeah.
When go home and think about it in the mirror. Yeah, right. I gotta think about things before I
Yeah, because he said some stuff,
witty.
Marcus, that is literally stuck to the tape, and it ain't pretty.
No, it's not.
You know what stuck to the tape means, right?
I don't.
Oh.
It's stuck to the tape. Whenever we get it, we can replay it whenever we want.
Yep.
Yeah,
We heard it.
You can never take it back, basically.
I gotcha.
These are kind of secrets in between us. We don't. It doesn't really leave this room, but
Well,
we just have it in between each other.
they were secrets among just you, because this will live on the internet forever, fellas. So
That's great.
all right. So I have to assume, guys, when you're on the phone together all day long, I've been talking to so many of you drivers, you liquid drivers out there. I know that crazy shit happens all the time out there on the road. I want you to talk me through maybe some of the crazy things that have happened while you guys have been connected on the hotline, and you've kind of helped each other through. Maybe it be weather, worse drivers, something's going on at a way station or at a truck stop. Like, you guys have got some stories. I know you have to. So decide among yourselves who wants to tell the first story, because I know there's probably a few of them. Any of those come to mind?
Polar bear, you take this one, bud.
I was going to say, it's the last month, it just seems like there's always something that I've learned that I've pushed off to these guys, Just like earlier, Cleach and I was talking, he was coming up into Memphis, and they're working on I-55. He's on a time crunch that he's not going to make, but still he tries to go as hard and fast as he can. So, right there, we decided listen to me, you decided this is the way I'm going to go, to bypass Memphis, which worked great.
So just that being able to bounce those decisions off of one another seems to be really handy for you guys, because maybe somebody has a bit of experience or knows something that you don't.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah, there's the amount of experience that's on this phone line now over the considered years of what we have, but mostly with all of us pulling for the same company. A lot of the stories and stuff we have are our own doings, but a lot of the knowledge that we pass on while we're telling our stories is we've gotten, we've had to help. Here we go with Wendell, and we say he has ghost anxiety. It's anxiety that he never has that appears, because he gets a little high strung when he's trucking, and so
I ain't got anxiety.
Hey.
So we like to help Piotr out, and he will call us. He'll call us and he'll say, "Hey, don't put me in the group. I just want to talk to you," and we'll talk him through something. Doesn't matter which one of us does it, and we'll get him through it, or he'll do the vice versa. He's a great listener when it comes down to it. If you get Yoder one-on-one, he's a great listener, and he's a great friend to help us, through the day. Jason and I bounce things off each other.
I know I have.
We all do it. We all have stories. I don't think there's really a lot that's crazy. I mean, we see the normal, idiot drivers out here, which most of them are in Omaha, but that's not, I didn't say it out loud. But I found out that Omaha has two sister cities. One's Little Rock, Arkansas, and the other one's Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I think they all migrated somehow.
Yeah, I got you there. Well, and I just want to go ahead and interject on the ghost anxiety thing. Wendell, when you said earlier, I ain't got anxiety, that was the least anxiety-ridden thing I've ever heard. So That was the most even keel, like calm, like I don't have that. Like you did. There's no anxiety in that guy. I think you're right. It's ghosts.
I get wound up sometimes when I get a little under pressure and swirly. Yeah.
So
a little bit.
I would think every driver does. I mean, when you guys are out there tugging around 80,000 pounds of liquid, it's got to ride the nerves from time to time. But how about a time when somebody has anybody ever just completely lost their shit on the Teenage Hotline? Like just
oh my! Here we go.
Just once in a while or every day?
Okay.
Once in a while, or yeah.
Well, let's just go. Let me rephrase the question. Who amongst you loses their shit every day?
Okay. I'm going to say it. I'm guessing that they're going to point at me.
I was going to say, on the count of three, everybody say it.
Yeah.
Please, Matt.
Yeah. I pretty much lose my shit on some idiot four-wheeler every day. I can't do nothing about it, but I do. I can scream and yell, and it makes me feel better.
Good. Well, Polar Bear, you sent me a text message just yesterday of like Mike Tyson knocking somebody out and asked if I ever wanted to do that. And I told you most weeks, yeah. So I have to assume I assume something went down yesterday that made you ask me that. Did you you get annoyed, lose your shit a little bit yesterday?
No, I'm always watching TV, and we got a text where we send it to the whole Teenage Hotline. Well, I seen it, and I took a video of it and sent it. So I sent it to them, and then I sent it to you. Just, have you ever had this happen? No, I was parked when that happened.
Well, yeah, of course. I kind of caught that there, and I appreciate you sent. I almost feel like I'm an honorary member of the Teenage Hotline at this point.
We've kind of put you in, yeah.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it.
We're adopted.
You're talking to us, so you're in.
I'm the adopted one. I love it, man. This has already been so much fun, and I've got so much more here to talk about. But before I dive more into the things that I've prepared, I definitely want to give all of you guys a chance to just kind of say whatever's on your mind, if it pertains to the Teenage Hotline or not. You know, you guys are kind enough to come on here and share your time with me. I want to give you the floor and let you just kind of talk about the Teenage Hotline, talk about your friendship, talk about the job, talk about whatever you want to talk about if you've got something. If the answers, look, I've already said it, just pass it on, that's fine. But Matt, let's start with you. You're the guy that came up with the A-Team theme thing. You're the guy that at least called me and asked me about it. So you're going first here. Wide open floor with the Teenage Hotline as kind of a loose topic. What's coming to mind for you to talk about right now?
The camaraderie, the friendship that we've all built. I've been lucky enough that I've been able to go out to eat with each and every one of the guys. I've been able to drink a beer with each and every one of the guys. We've went through personal problems on a personal level with each and every one of the guys, talking to them. The camaraderie, and then to boot it, the amount of knowledge that these guys, the different locations we go to on a professional level that they can get us through. That's the Teenage Hotline to me. It's just the friendship that we've built, and it's standing. I have a ton of respect for each one of these guys. I give them all a hard time. They dish it back. A lot of good laughs. You know, we know about each other more than just truck drivers. So that's my concept of the Teenage Hotline.
John, how about you?
Pretty much, yeah. If you got any sort of question or any problem that arises on the road, someone on the line here deal with it. Like Lee said, you know, if you need to get in somewhere, you have no idea what you're doing at this place, what the procedures are. Somebody will throw you a helping hand. I mean, walk you like hand in hand, just through everything. No questions asked. I mean, it's just, yeah, the respect that each and every one of us has for each other is just phenomenal.
It really sounds like it. You can hear it. You can hear it. I can feel it being in the conversation with you guys. Jason, you're up now.
I don't know if I could have said it any better, because when you brought it up, the topic, I was kind of thinking the same way. It's just like there's
I've had some things happen and over the past few months that I you just need somebody, and it's better to have somebody when you're out here a lot of times than just being in here alone and dealing with it mentally. And when you've got a group of guys that are as great as these guys here that are on this phone right now, that as much shit as we may force out on each other and give each other and the laughs we have and the goofing around, there's also this really serious side to everybody that's more than willing to hear you out, listen you out. And then it doesn't just end there. It'll go on for days. They'll keep they'll check in on you. Even on the weekend, I'll get a phone call, especially Matt. He can be a hard ass and, ornery, but he's such a good guy, and John Fry, they'll all reach out like, hey, how you doing today? How's it going now? So it's just, I don't know. It's just really, it's one of the strongest bonds I think in my life that I've probably ever had with a group of guys.
That's awesome. And once again, like I said, you can tell. And, let our episode from a few weeks ago be kind of an example of this, but everybody needs somebody to talk to sometime, like you said right there. And I think that that's really important that we remember everybody's fighting a battle out here that we all know nothing about. And the more camaraderie and trust that we can have in one another in dealing with that type of stuff, the better. And so I love that you guys have this thing going on and you can help each other in that way, as well as from a professional standpoint where you're helping with, drops and loads and everything like that. Wendell, I'm headed to you next, my friend. What comes to your mind when I say the words Teenage Hotline?
Well, when I came from northern North Dakota and I came down here, I didn't know anybody. I mean, I have my girlfriend, wife now, and I met some people outside of the trucking industry that adopted me as family. And when I got into driving truck, these guys are my group of friends. They're like brothers to me. They just, it started out more informational, and then it just gets, kind of personal, and we're like a family. It really, it made moving down here from way up north really pleasant to know you have people, friends like this, a group. And, like I say, we're like brothers. We really are.
Sure. Well, I'm glad they made that transition, or this made that transition easy on you. I like how you said it started out as like mostly, professional advice type thing, and then they learned that they could shit on you all day, and then that's what
exactly. And I didn't do nothing about it, so they like that. So
Yoder never heard of it.
Polar Bear, I'm on to you, man. When I say Teenage Hotline, what hits your mind, buddy?
So one thing that I enjoy listening to, because I'm an OFC, which I can't say what the OFC stands for, but they're all Bartow drivers. So I really enjoy listening to Yoder will come on all frantic. Oh, I'm going over here to Yes and Yes. I'll be there at 4:00, can I? And Fleetcher SD, nope, got to be there by 4. Or do we got to scale in? Or they'll be going to this place and Fleetch will say, hey, I was just there and they're working on the main entrance. Go backwards around it. That's what I like listening to. Just the knowledge of all of them, just what hours they got. Do you got to scale in? When can we unload? That's what I like listening to. And the other thing I'm going to end it with, that's the worst of it. Don't let him know where you're going to park, because he's going to be standing right there at the front of your truck waiting for a hug. So that's what we all do when we see each other. The only one I really don't see is FD, but I mean Jason, Yoder, Cleach, Berto, every time I see him.
Well, that's awesome. That's great, man.
That's the other family thing right there. It's not just calling each other friends. It's proving it. That's. We're like I said, we're brothers, we're family.
Absolutely. Well said from all of you guys. And I really appreciate that. I wanted to make sure we got that in, because the next thing that I'm going to turn this to, it could go off the rails, and if it does, it wouldn't surprise me at all. So I've never had 5 drivers on here at one time before. In fact, I don't know that I've had more than 2 or 3 drivers on before. And so I'm going to seize this opportunity live because one of the most important things for me during the day doing my job is that what you guys are listening to that we're pumping out here, it does something for you. Whether it entertains you, it educates you, it makes you think, it makes you laugh, it tugs at your heartstrings. I don't care what emotion it elicits, but I'm hoping, along with all the goals that we have in disseminating information and making sure you guys get important stuff from the front office, I want to make sure that the podcast is good. I want you guys to like it. And right now, the numbers tell me that you guys more than like it. I mean, there's like 5 times the amount of people that work for Liquid listening to this podcast on a weekly basis. So I want to ask you guys, starting over with you, go through one by one. What types of things do you want to hear on the podcast going forward, and why have you liked it thus far? Wendell, how about we go to you real quick? What do you like about the podcast as it is, and what would you like to hear in the future?
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed listening to everybody, talk and the different the managers and stuff telling different things, and the drivers. I enjoy hearing all the stuff. I really don't know. I don't know what to say, like, going forward, what I'd like to hear, I guess.
So if I did more of the same, you'd probably be okay with it, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. It's very educational and entertaining.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that, and I hope we can keep it like that for you going forward. Matt, how about for you, man? What do you like about it? What are we doing right? What can we do in the future to make it better?
I like the podcast. I mean, it's good. I love hearing from, like, Roger, Josh, Jason, Dave. They're informative. Tanner, I've learned a lot of stuff about the company from their point of view, and I think that's good for all the drivers. But on the other side, I like the drivers, but I'm not a very serious kind of person unless I'm pissed, and then I'm very serious. But I like the comical side. I like the fun stuff, like some of the drivers, and they're cooking, or just, like joking around. I like that kind of stuff too. I don't like political, and I don't like religious stuff.
Well, I mean,
that's where I draw the line.
That's how I make all my friends, though, Matt. Come on, like. No, I am a rural country kid in the city in Oregon. I don't have any friends. Let's just put it that way.
You got us now.
Good. I added 5 of them today, man. I thank you for that.
Yeah, I think what you're doing is great. I love the podcast. I've listened to it every week. I don't download it, but I listen to it every weeek.
Awesome. That's all we asked for.
Just because I'm not technically advanced enough to know how to do that.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. Yoder, you've got a little bit of ammo for it. Next time he shits on you, you can say, well, at least I know how to download a podcast.
Exactly. Gee whiz, even I can do that. With the help of Roxy.
So what we say, a Yoder can do it?
Anybody can do it.
How about you, Jason? What have you heard on the podcast that you enjoy? What would you like to hear more of in the future?
Like a lot like Matt, I've really enjoyed hearing from the guys that started all of this, as far as this company goes, and the history and how it started and all that. And like, I mean, I'm a driver trainer, so there's times that, like, when I'm out there and we've got a long drive back, that I'll Bluetooth it to the stereo and I'll let the new guys listen to it, so they can kind of get a feel and like a look into the company itself also. I mean, I'm not sure if they get all that when they start. I really don't know how the beginning process, the first 2 days goes here, but I mean, I've used it for that like multiple times, so they can kind of get an idea and turn them onto the podcast so they just know it's not some. I mean, I think it's a great thing. I really enjoy listening to it. I mean, I can't really say enough about it. I mean, I was mind blown when it came out and it came about. I couldn't believe it happened. And it's just cool. As far as where it goes, I just feel like, I don't know, the sky's kind of the limit on that thing. You do a great job and it's fun. I mean, I don't really know what else to say. I'm not like that kind of most really creative person, I guess, in that aspect.
Hey, man, it's fine. I love it. In fact, I'm going to give you something to do the next time you've got a new guy in the rig. just turn it on and don't say anything about it, and just see if eventually they turn and look at you and be like, who is this asshat? Like, why have we been listening to him for the last 4 hours of our day? I want to see if that'll elicit a reaction for you. But I appreciate that, man. I love that you're turning new drivers onto the podcast, because, you know, it's important that we're in everybody's ears that wants to listen. And I think the new drivers can probably get something out of a lot of the stuff. If you seasoned drivers are getting something out of it, then there's definitely something there for the new drivers. No question.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've got other buddies that drive for other companies, and I mean, I've turned them on to it. I mean, if they're interested or not, like, give it a shot, you know? I mean, you can learn a little bit about it, so maybe they can jump ship and come over here and join
the good guys.
Liquid Trucking.
Yeah, join the good guys,
exactly.
right. All right, thank you, man. Thanks. That's all that stuff. You guys have all said a lot of really nice stuff. John, what do you like about the podcast? What do you want to see in the future?
I don't know how much more I can add. I mean, the guys pretty much hit the nail on the head, you know. Very informative, you know, driver-related segments and stuff. And I don't know anything off the top of my head what you could do more going forward, you know, other than keep on doing what you're doing. You know, doing an awesome job.
Thank you. I was actually going to think about freestyle rapping once or twice per episode, but I can't get that one past review, unfortunately, but it's just because I haven't found my flow yet. I'll get it.
You'll get there.
Polar Bear, I want to go back to you, my friend. Go ahead and answer the question for us now. Sounds like he's still breaking up, huh?
Yeah.
Well,
he's still breaking up.
He is. That's all right. He's up there above the Arctic Circle somewhere, driving around. I'm sure of it.
Polar Bear would.
Oh, man, it's like now it's almost comical that we keep going to him and only catching every other second of what he's saying, because, I mean, does this ever happen when you guys are on the line, somebody's service gets shoddy and they just become the butt of every joke?
Yeah. Yeah. I can tell you right now, and the boys can back me up, what we're talking about right now is light. This is a light lunch. It's toned down a lot. Yeah, this is toned down. I mean, a lot. People are still pissing me off. but yeah, I've toned it down. We've toned it down a lot because we're pretty harsh.
Hey, I can tell. And I mean, I appreciate you guys toning it down just for the podcast, just because I don't want to put my editor through all of the bleeps that we would probably have to put in if you guys were 100% on right now. So I really appreciate it, fellas. But thanks for joining us on this special presentation of the Best of the Liquid Trucking podcast. If you have anything that you want to hear, again, just let us know by sending us an email, podcast@liquidtrucking.com. Thanks for checking in, Liquid Trucking. Stay safe out there.